Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for July 14th, 2023. I'm Benji Fisher, moderating and sharing my screen. And also present are Aaron McHale, Ralph Kohler, Simo Helston, and Thomas. We're looking at the issue for today's meeting, which is 337-3236. And Aaron helpfully copied out a list of issues that have been requested for discussion. Would anyone care to choose one of these?
Well, the second one at the top has is one issue, but it's got like a bunch of discussion there. So from a list management perspective, like if we if we tackled that one, the list would look a lot shorter. But I don't know if we're set up to tackle that yet.
Well, we can give it a try, and it does sort of make sense to start at the top. So 203-5079, figure out what to do with the install/uninstall modules page. And there's some notes from previous usability meetings, I guess just these two. On one of them, we started discussing the proposed options, but we ran out of time, possibly splitting the confirm form into its own issue. We may want to look at that for both modules and themes, a standard pattern, consider implications of project browser. Worth considering parity with Drush and other extension/package managers. And then at a later usability meeting, both of these are from 2022, so less than a year ago. Simo Hell presented the various proposals, but we again ran out of time to have an in-depth discussion. Using the drop button pattern on the module page for the existing links and uninstall was suggested. So those are the notes that Aaron brought forward onto the issue for today's meeting. And here's the issue. Again, this is 203-5079. Figure out what to do with the install/uninstall modules page. And after some other issue, this is where, if I can read that crossed out title, disabled modules are broken beyond repair, so the disable functionality needs to be removed. I guess that's where we separated the uninstall page to a separate tab and disabled all of these checkboxes on the list of installed modules. So you could no longer uninstall them from the list page. And let's just go over to my live site and have a look at this. So again, with an installed module, you can't uninstall it. This is a disable checkbox. Can't tell, but I'm clicking on it with no effect. If you want to uninstall a module, you have to go over to the separate tab, uninstall. And from there, some of these are disabled because it's required by other enabled modules. But if you want your site to be slower, you can uninstall the Big Pipe module. But you cannot do that from the list page. You can only install modules from the list page. So let's just finish reading the issue description. Checkboxes are used in order to enable modules. However, once modules are enabled, they can never be disabled. So the checkboxes stay checked and disabled, even for non-required modules and modules without subdependencies, unlike what the disable checkboxes represented in Drupal 7. The only thing you can do after enabling a module is uninstall it, but that's on a separate tab, which is not immediately obvious. The discussion here is how to address this disconnect, ideally by combining the two pages. We have a proposed resolution with a screenshot. Well, actually, several options. Option 1, move checkboxes to bulk operations style checkboxes. Add drop button for action. Add column to indicate the on-off status of modules. So a checkbox, a status, module name, and a description. And then at the bottom, have a link to uninstall the selected modules. And perhaps if we want more than one option there, use a drop button. Option 2 is to keep checkboxes as they are. Make the off version perform uninstall. This is the simplest thing that could possibly work. It's tricky, however, since uninstall is destructive, making it very easy for people to accidentally delete data they didn't mean to by making it too easy to perform uninstallation, especially if enabling/uninstalling modules are combined into the same form submission. Yoroi mocked a confirm form to warn people about potential destruction in response. And this hand-drawn mock-up says you are about to uninstall ctools. These modules rely on ctools, and their config/data will also be removed. Module X, module Y, module Z. Okay, go ahead, or all right, let's not.
And this is the part where we thought that it could be a separate issue, so that it would be more manageable.
So I guess the order would be first to implement the confirmation form and then to integrate the two tabs. And then we got this more realistic mock-up of an uninstall form that I guess the idea is you would select some modules to install and possibly some modules to uninstall, which I can't currently do, and then submit the form at the bottom. Presumably, we would change the label on that button, and we would pop up this confirmation form, which would show which modules will be uninstalled, any content that would have to be deleted, and any configuration that would be changed. And I guess if you were doing it from the list page, you might also be installing modules, which would make the confirmation form, add another section to the confirmation form. Option 3, stop using checkboxes for communicating state, switch to buttons instead. And there's a possible mock-up. And let's actually look at a larger version of this mock-up. So we would have a button next to each one. If the module is installed, it has a green dot and the text is uninstall. If it's not installed, you would have an open button and the text install. The advantage to this approach is that color cues as well as labels can begin a warning prior to initiating any action. There is also no chance of weird interactions when trying to install and uninstall modules in the same page request. I guess the idea is that the button would have an immediate action. The disadvantage is installing multiple modules in one go is no longer possible, which is convenient, especially for modules like Drupal Commerce, etc., with multiple submodules. though presumably toggling would initiate an AJAX request, so it wouldn't be quite as tedious. However, bear in mind that each button click is initiating a 30+ second page load by rebuilding all of the various caches. This one has one other strong advantage, which is that it is very visually stark change from Drupal 7, which is indicative of the stark behavioral change from Drupal 7 as well, which will hopefully cut down on accidental destruction of data from those who do not read warnings carefully enough. Option 4, add uninstall button to each enabled module. Again, I'd like to look at this in a separate tab so it's a little larger. So here for the bottom 3 modules, they're all installed. And there's in the far right column an uninstall button. And I don't know why the toolbar and tour modules don't have that button. It could be that whoever made the mockup just didn't bother to do it. It could be that you have to open up this details element to see the uninstall button. Or it could be that these have dependencies. I'm guessing the idea is that you only see it when you open up the details element. Option 5, make modules page similar to admin/content. Same style and pattern as with content and module specific actions as drop buttons, also including bulk actions and combining the list/layout with confirmation page from option 2. And once again, let's have a look at the mockup in a separate tab. The name, the description, the version, the status, the package, the operations. So perhaps some of these don't deserve to be separate columns and might be combined in the description column, but that's open to discussion. So first order of business, any questions or clarifications required?
For the last one, there is also in comment 132 detail about the drop button.
Should we look at that now?
Yeah, I think because it's kind of a
comment 132. Why don't you go ahead and read it since it's your comment?
yeah, so this kind of explains the whole thing. So yeah, so to limit different styles of it's just a lot of typos, composing and filtering lists. I propose using the style from admin/content list. So here filter is done using exposed filters, and filtering lists are not split across different tabs. So that means it's not different. So kind of you can filter if it's installed or not. I feel this is in line with general usability heuristics and, for example, principle of simulation design usability approach. Actually, I did this kind of a analysis of the different options. I had some slides for that. So this type of listing uses existing patterns and increases the amount of information provided and improves user control over to keep up to date this. Yeah, so yeah, and I made it with Claro theme. So it would have those filters and bulk actions similar to content, and there would be links to the project pages, and they would be those drop buttons that would include information about configuring and what are other stuff, permissions, and what are other stuff that modules have, but so that it would have wouldn't have so much. It could fit a lot of stuff on one line. And yeah, the status and package, it would be so that you could, they could be used for sorting, I think, there on the table. So you could it could be useful for package, could be used for filtering, but also you could filter what is installed and what is not from there, or sort. Yeah, and then the drop button is it shows how it would look like if there would be those different options. So the image is a little bit after that one. So it's a detail from the one of the modules. So it would say space, and they would be like different options would be close to each other, different actions.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or clarifications? So do you think the remaining 37 minutes will be enough to agree on one of these options?
I have some thoughts.
Go ahead.
I think this could be multiple issues. First of all, I think there's like a lot of ideas here, and for instance, I like the idea, regardless of what happens, I like the idea of a more consistent layout. So the idea of making this look more like, you know, content, media lists, and using drop buttons, I think is a good idea. Either way, I think using the drop button for links like permission, configure, help, I think is a good idea. And I think there we could also provide an uninstall link. So I think that in itself could be a single issue, and I think is a good idea, regardless of what happens. The main thing, the main problem here is I see as well with some of the approaches is like, if we try and do bulk operations, say we do want one list for all the modules, it's like, okay, you either have an individual action. So it's either you can install one at a time or you can uninstall one at a time. And I think that would work fine. But if we try to then bring in like a bulk operation, I mean, it was already noted that could be tricky because it's like if you try and install and uninstall modules in the same operation, that might get that might be trickier to communicate, could result in accidental data loss. Or like with bulk actions, it's like, okay, you could select the install action, and then if you've selected modules that are already installed, do we like warn you about the fact that you can't install these? I think like it seems like that would take a lot of effort to get right. And I wonder if it's worth it, given that we know for maybe 80% of sites, this is going to be replaced by Project Browser. So this is the kind of interface that you would see if you're not using Project Browser. I suppose that's one way to look at it. And Project Browser allows you to like install, it has, you know, it's a whole interactive front end that has like you click on it, install, and it does it in the background kind of thing. So yeah, I feel like part of me feels like we should just scrap the whole idea of like being able to do bulk actions, and it should just be a operation at a time, because it's not like you are, you know, there might be cases where, yeah, you go to install something like commerce and it's like, okay, it has a bunch of sub modules that you want to install, but like it's not going to take that much more time to go through and manually like install one and then install the next one. And you might want to do that because you think, okay, I've installed one module, now I need to go look at the configuration and permissions for that, and then you do the next one. So yeah, I don't have a definitive conclusion, but I see Ralph's got his hand up, so I'll pass over to Ralph.
Yeah, and Ralph also pasted a link into the chat several minutes ago for this project browser issue 3300397. Consider unifying all the extend tabs into a single tab. Ralph, go ahead.
At first, I agree with Aaron. Having bulk actions and doing uninstall and install at the same time, that is a road to potential problems down the road, and I'm not sure if it would be a good idea. But on the other hand, the only thing I would consider really useful is if you, for example, have a base module, like for example ECA with several submodules, and if you uninstall, for example, ECA, that you're able automatically uninstall the other installed ones as well, and you don't have to jump stepwise through all the different dependencies on the uninstall page, which is complicating and annoying from a user point of view. It might be safer, but still, and in Drush, it's also possible to uninstall all the dependencies alongside. So that I would consider a good thing. And yeah, I think I consider it important to pull the project browser perspective into the bigger picture, with their goal and the technology underneath, to unify everything on a single page, because in that screenshot is outdated. You already see those tabs with the for the plugins, the different ones. You have one for the mock and the Drupal.org mock, and one for core modules, which is basically that way you would see the same like in the list view on the extend page. In the context of core modules, I consider those cards visually not the best thing at all. But Project Browser also has a list view, and that could be also adjusted and updated in, because I also agree with Simo and Aaron, those drop buttons I consider useful. But to adjust it completely to the look and feel of the content pages, I'm also not sure. Something in between might be a more desirable choice from my point of view. But yeah, Thomas has also his hand up, so I'll end here.
I don't know if this is an issue, but when I was working support years ago, I ran into customers who did an insane number of modules that they were adding in, a lot of custom stuff. And my concern then kind of stems around if we make a very, if we put everything into one page and we have to have all these different ways of interacting with it, is there any risk of making the pages difficult to load? That's just something I was thinking of. Sort of like when people did crazy permissions and we had problems with the permissions pages loading properly.
Okay, so what are the considerations if you have a ridiculous number of modules? I guess if you have an actual form, then there are limits on the number of form elements that PHP is willing to process at one time. And that's an issue on the permissions page, especially because you have this grid. You have a whole bunch of different permissions, many modules, and sometimes per content type or based on configuration. So you have, this long list of permissions, and then for each permission you have a checkbox for each role. So I think we're limiting the number of checkboxes per module, and mostly what we have aren't actually form elements but links. So it's really only 1 or 2 form elements per module. So I don't think that we're going to run into that sort of performance problem that we had with the permissions page. It might take a long time for the page to load, especially if you, as with the project browser, you have icons to display for each one. But I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Well, speaking from experience, we have a site right now where we have the field permissions module installed, and there's anywhere from 1 to 200 fields on the site, and there's about 8 roles. So there's probably like over 5,000 checkboxes on the permission screen right now of this site. And it still loads. It's slow, but it still loads. So I think we're okay.
I'm guessing that you had to change your PHP configuration to increase the number of form elements it's willing to process.
I don't think we did, but yeah, the main permission screen is just incredibly laggy as well, but it'll load eventually.
Okay.
I do still like the idea of keeping modules grouped, you know, by their package, or like, you know, how right now the module list is grouped. I still think that's a good idea. So whatever we do, I feel like we should stick to that kind of approach.
So let's see, I just have core here, and it's groups things at several groups: field types, experimental. I guess I do have a couple of contrib modules. There's media, migration, multilingual. So that's the sort of grouping that you say you'd like to keep?
Yeah, I think that's still helpful because, you know, things like, particularly for, again, to use an example like commerce, where there's lots of modules that'll all be grouped under like the commerce heading, or same with ECA or whatever. So I think that's still a useful pattern.
In my
Right.
example, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Ralph.
Just in regards to the categorization, I'm not a big fan of the current approach. For one, you have module maintainers have the option to add an arbitrary category to a module, and that way, as soon as you have 5, 6, 7 different modules, the bigger ones, you have a whole long list of different categories on the page, and then you have also on Drupal.org other categories. At the moment, those 52 number, and That's something I've already suggested several times over in the project browser meetings, is as soon as those categories get applied to Drupal.org and accepted in case, use those for core as well. Then it would be consistent between Drupal.org's module repository and the ones used in Drupal core.
Yeah, these are actually two different modules that I maintain, which is why I have them in my own installation. And one of them, the category is input filters, and the category is filter. I think I should fix that. And I think there are some contrib modules that create things that don't say field types, but just say fields or something like that. So yeah, it is a problem that the package can be something arbitrary. Go ahead, Simo.
Yeah, in my version, it had kind of two ways to deal with the package. So it was possible to sort by the package, so it could be more visible, maybe closer to name, so it would be kind of a more obvious that these belongs to the same package, and it also possible to filter by package, because one of the things with the current grouping by package is that you can't easily find the package, like go to the find the list of packages and go to the correct one. So that if you want to find commerce, then you have to search for kind of you can search the description, I think, but not the package. And also, if you use browser search function, then you kind of all the dependencies are highlighted. So that's kind of at least some way to filter by package, or jump to the correct package, or sort by package. So that kind of a functionality is needed. So yeah, I had that filter and then sorting.
Right. So this tabular presentation does give us a lot of options for how we view things. Sort, filter. Whereas the current page, sort of, if you want just an alphabetical list of modules, I don't think there's any way to get that. They just are grouped together. I often find myself when looking at this page going through and closing all the categories till I find the one that I want. Aaron?
Yeah, I think those are fair points, and I guess as long as there's like, I think if there's a way to like filter by category, that's probably good as well. I am aware, like, because this is the kind of issue where we've discussed it like at 2 previous meetings, but I really don't want to have to write another entry on those carry forward notes. Please no. So I feel like there's potentially some concrete actions that we could recommend here, you know, and I don't think anybody has objected to the idea of using drop buttons for those, you know, the links, and that also gives us the flexibility to provide an uninstall link and, you know, drop button link there as well. So I think that could be a follow-up issue in itself. Like that seems like a nice well-scoped thing. You know, we're talking about categories again. We could have a separate issue to think, okay, what's the best way to layout? Because the current, actually, I was in my head, I was thinking when I was talking, I was thinking about the Drupal 7.1, but actually the one in like, as you got there, is actually not too dissimilar in terms of its styling and layout from content. It's using a table, you know, and it's kind of similar style. So again, we could have an issue that we think, okay, what's the best grouping for this page, and make a recommendation. Whether it is this or whether it's, again, exposing a filter and having a column. And then, you know, a separate issue to think about, or I guess continuing with this issue, could be more scope to think about. Do we need these checkboxes? Do we have one list? Do we have the current list and a separate uninstall list? I think that's the big thing where we don't have a clear answer to this yet. Well, that's a big list of dependencies right there, Benji. So yeah, there's an example of something where there's a lot of information there, and at that scale, it's like that's really hard to, that required by for the field module is really hard to parse because of just how much there is.
Ralph mentions in the chat, I'm not a fan of disabled interface elements. That is also a point in regards of the extend page. We are talking about the extend page.
Is it really a problem that we have two pages? Like, I feel like if we try and combine uninstall with the list page, there's just, we're opening like a can of worms, and it feels far too risky in some ways. And as you said, we've got these disabled form. We have to have these disabled checkboxes right now, but
right. So to Aaron's point, that we have talked about this before, and we want to make some progress. We have to decide for the remaining 18 minutes of this meeting. Do we want to identify some small incremental improvement? Do we want to decide on an end goal? Shall we decide that the project browser is coming and therefore we should stick with the small incremental improvements? Or do we want to have an idea of where we're going, one of these options, before we decide what the next steps are? So I'd like to sort of decide where today's discussion is going to wind up. Ralph, what do you want to say?
Just one comment in regards of Aaron's worry. I sort of agree that unifying the list and the uninstall tab might cause worries. But on the other hand, then the problem is still with the uninstall page, because there you have an unstructured long list without any grouping, which is way more difficult to process. And also with, again, the example, my biggest gripe with those disabled uninstall buttons, and then to find out why and disabled uninstall button on which other module has to be uninstalled first, and it's some sort of don't know the word in English right now, scavenger hunt. Yep, it was scavenger hunt to finally reach the final module that way, and it's cumbersome. And again, yeah, the disabled buttons add visually another facet to that problem.
Okay, so that suggests an incremental step, that we should start by making it possible to uninstall a module with all of its dependencies with the confirmation form. And that would probably be useful regardless of which of the main options we choose. Does that sound reasonable? Get a thumbs up from Ralph. And also getting thumbs up from Simo and Aaron. Okay, and from Thomas. Okay, so as a first step on this towards the maybe a child issue, we should give the uninstall page parity with Drush, that it is possible to uninstall any module, and that will involve providing a confirmation form that you're not only going to uninstall the module that you chose, you're also going to be uninstalling these other modules. That'll be sort of consistent with the way installing modules goes, right? You can install a module that has requirements and you'll get a confirmation form showing you all the modules you're going to install at once. And even with Project Browser coming and sort of totally changing the user interface, that's still functionality that I think will be useful.
I don't know the latest on the discussions, but my understanding is that you could uninstall Project Browser and you would get back to this. So, like, I think and again, I don't know that for sure, but that's what I've understood. Maybe someone can clarify that, but if that's the case, then we're still going to want to make improvements here too.
Okay, so where is the original issue? Maybe I'll just open it up again. So does this issue have any child issues yet? Has a bunch of related issues. It's referenced by, doesn't have any child issues. And let's just briefly scan through these related issues, see if any of them are related to this confirmation form we're proposing.
Yeah, the one there that says come up with a better alternative for grouping on the module page is one we were just discussing. At the bottom of the related.
This one, but yeah, that's related to our discussion, but it's not related to the idea of the confirmation form, is it? And being able to uninstall multiple modules.
No, but it's another issue we don't have to create. It already exists. So that's good. We can at least reference it.
Is maybe the move module dependency messages from the install form to the uninstall form sort of related or halfway covering?
So this is issue 2392695. Move module dependency messages from the install form to the uninstall form. The API. This doesn't have anything under proposed resolution. User interface changes required by lines are removed from the install form.
Is that a good idea? That feels like a bad idea.
Well, at the moment, I'm just interested in whether it's already suggesting something about uninstalling multiple modules at once, and it doesn't seem to be. And there doesn't seem to have been a lot of interest. There were, what, 8 comments? And then since then, just the update version bot. This is certainly a candidate to close for lack of interest. Or I guess the official term is closed won't fix. But it is not duplicating what we've been discussing. Okay, so we need a new issue that will let us uninstall multiple modules at once And so,
Well, it's not. I mean, you can. What it would do is allow you to uninstall modules and sorry, uninstall. Let me get this right. Hold up. Uninstall modules and the modules which depend on it at the same time. Because right now you can uninstall multiple modules. You just can't uninstall modules which have other modules depending on that module in the same action.
right. So there would no longer be any disabled checkboxes on the uninstall page.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need someone to create that issue. And that should be the first step on this larger issue that we started looking at. So who volunteers to create the issue? Don't all answer at once.
Yeah, I mean I don't mind doing that, and then or I'm also happy to do the one about, because there's another issue about adding the introducing a drop button to the module list. So there's that one. Wonder if that.
So there is already a confirmation form. And it does have some of the elements from the mock-ups. It's not as pretty as the mock-ups. And these are collapsible details elements. So I guess the confirmation form is already there. So
yeah, it's really just a case of expanding the capabilities.
And that will give it parity with the install form. Where's a module that has dependencies on other things? That workspaces. No.
Maybe migrate Drupal has dependency on migrate.
Yes.
Close to your own heart.
So installing a module automatically checks dependencies and tells me that in addition to the migrate Drupal UI module that I selected, I'm also going to have to install these other three: migrate Drupal, and password compatibility. So we're really just giving the uninstall page parity with the install page.
Yeah, and also like that list really should be a bulleted list, because, well, that would be nice, but it would also make it again consistent with the uninstall page. So there's another issue there.
Yes.
So we've got, I'm going to start writing things down here. So we have two there we've identified. The first one about, how did I word that again? It was uninstall, ability to uninstall modules which other modules depend on. This is, I want to get the wording right because it's really easy to get this one confused. Install confirm form should use bullet list. like uninstall form. And are we all in agreement on drop buttons for install? I feel like nobody objected to that.
You might get some pushback from the themers, the designers. They have these nice icons for help and permissions and configure. And I guess the other criterion is, will that contribute to whatever the final solution is? That's not clear to me.
Well, if we can create an issue and then we'll figure it out. I mean, I would be okay with the personally the icons continuing to exist, whether they are in a drop button. The other question would be, what should the default option be on the drop button? What's the most common action would be? Possibly configure. And we probably also, so drop button for module list should also have icons. Should have an uninstall button. So I'm phrasing these as questions. We also said, yeah, what should default option be? So I mean, I can create that issue and then we can have, it gives us a place to have that discussion, because right now, if we've got this one giant issue, it's becoming a bit overwhelming, I think.
Okay.
So there's 3 new issues identified. Are there any others? I guess that
my interest is making some progress, and I think identifying the being able to uninstall any module with its dependent modules is a really good first step. So
yeah. And then the sort of the bulk select is still like a bit of an elephant in the room kind of thing.
right, well, that's currently the uninstall page sort of is a bulk operations. You select some things you want to uninstall, and then you submit the form. So it.
Yeah. So are we saying that we're advocating to keep this separation? That's what it sounds like we're saying.
No, we're saying that this first step will be helpful, whatever the ultimate decision is on the larger plan, and that the first step is not going to combine the 2 pages or make any major changes. The first step will just apply to the uninstall page. Right.
I'm just thinking, like, my gut feeling is that having these 2 pages separate is better, because the uninstall action is very destructive. So it might be useful to provide that if that's something we agree on, to say that in the issue, to provide some guidance. Yeah, Ralph.
In regards of separating or not separating, in the context of a plugin or modules page, I tend to look at WordPress. Their plugin page is quite good in that regard and straightforward. They have bulk actions. They have a single page, and on each module or plugin, in their case, they have an activate or deactivate link, as well as a delete one. And they have an add new button, which leads to an interface similar to a project browser, basically. And maybe that's something to take a look at, because it's, for me, from a usability perspective and from a comprehension perspective, it's easy to navigate and to understand and clearly communicated.
But
But
maybe
dude-
it would help to add a screenshot of that to the main issue.
Yeah, good.
But we are running a little over time. Thomas, go ahead.
Just briefly, I don't remember with WordPress if it had as many module dependencies. Like I remember what Ralph described, but I just don't recall if it had the complexity of the Drupal module environment.
I don't think they have any dependencies, as far as I remember.
Okay, so I just want to make certain we're comparing apples to apples. I did like the page, but I just didn't know if it applied to the Drupal concept.
Also, just to check, Ralph, do you know if on WordPress do they have bulk actions for plugins? Because I could see a single page working if
they
there
have.
isn't. Okay.
If I could quickly share my screen for a second, then I can show you a running page.
Okay.
Share screen. Share. Basic. Are you seeing my screen right now?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So it's just a out of the box install. You have those. You have activate, and you have deactivate, which switches directly. When it's deactivated, you have the ability to delete, and then you have bulk actions to activate, deactivate, update, delete, enable auto updates, and disable auto updates. And if you go to add new, then you're on something similar to a project browser.
What if you try to bulk? What if so one that you've got there, if you activate one of those plugins, right? Now,
Oops, that's what's
okay.
what's bad. An example. Yeah, if you go here, activate.
So if you select the checkbox now,
yeah,
and if you go to the bulk actions, what if you select activate and then apply? What happens? Nothing.
no feedback, and it remains the same. So
Okay. So like I guess like we could warn on the confirm form, we could be like, okay, if you select a module, if we had a unified interface and you select a module that's already installed and you go to install, we could warn, say this module's already installed or something.
Or in case let's say you have 3 modules you want to install, one is already installed, but you select it for the bulk action, and then on the admin notice that you've successfully installed modules, then you can just simply say, yeah, 2 modules were successfully installed, the other one was already been installed. Something like that.
Isn't that what Drush says? Drush. I think it also has something like something was already installed or already enabled.
Yeah, I think it does give that message.
So that might be an option. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, we are a few minutes over time. Happy to talk about this again next week if you want to continue the discussion. But let's get the next step issue created, and yeah, feel free to talk about it.
Yeah. I'll create those issues I took notes about, and then we can also maybe put a comment on the issue to say, okay, you know, we discussed these and created these issues, but there's still more potentially to discuss. Okay, I'm just excited that we can move slightly. We're moving slightly forward, and I can take the notes off of the carry forward list.
Okay.
The issue can stay there, but at least those notes can go away because we've addressed a good chunk of the things there. So, but if we want to, yeah, I think maybe we should pick this up again next week because it sounds like there's more we could talk about. Particularly if we can get like Christina or somebody in on the discussion too.
Okay.
Cool.
Nice weekend, everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you all. Take care.
Have a nice weekend.
All right.
Bye.
Yeah.